So we're gonna have a little bit of play. We're gonna have a little mischief here. The show is positive mischief. Sure. We've got our jester. Okay. Jester hails from New Orleans. If you've been there, you may have experienced him firsthand. If you have not, this will be a different experience, I promise you.
You know what? My very first job was an intern at McElhenney. So I worked on Avery Island. So I've been to New Orleans quite a few times. I was doing newsletters for internal newsletters for Tabasco.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. So here we go. We're going to have a different gesture this time, okay? All right, let's see what we've got inside of his head. Let's see what Dan thinks about some of these things. Okay. You're going to go over there for now. You're in Southern California. You're in LA?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so what is your opinion of Disneyland? Because after all, one's opinion of Disneyland is very telling.
Oh, okay. All right. I have to be honest, right?
You have to be honest. I mean, Fox, okay. You're owned by Disney and all that. Dan's not hating it. He doesn't like Disney.
No. They paid Fox a lot of money for a lot of stuff. So I've been to it quite a few times, and I have 2 kids, and when they were younger, they enjoyed it very much. And I encourage and I appreciate people loving it and having season passes and stuff like that. But for me personally, there's an age cutoff for being so excited about Disneyland.
Okay. So was there something that happened to you that maybe Pirates of the Caribbean kind of like one too many times and you're like, I'm done?
You know what? I don't know, because when I went there with the kids and everything, like, you could tell that it was almost like they were serious about it. Mm. And that almost took the fun of like, no, we're just supposed to be here enjoying ourselves. It's like, no, we have to get the beignets. Then we have to do this. Oh, I have to wear my things and my pins and all of that kind of stuff. And I don't know, it became like, seems like it becomes a sport. Almost like how well you can do it.
How well you can do it, yes.
Yeah, so to me, that's a little too intense. However, there might be something else in my life that I'm completely unaware of that I put that much energy and enthusiasm.
We all have those, yeah. There was something I heard on the radio the other day taking my daughter to school. There's a guy who is set the Guinness Book of World Records for being at Disneyland every day for 2,000 some odd. Did you hear about this?
You know what? I saw it on a subreddit of, it's called They Did the Math subreddit. Yeah. And it was discussing how much he had spent doing that.
That's an obscene amount of time to be at one place every day.
Yes. And that's the kind of commitment that I find a little scary.
Yeah, that one struck me as interesting. I love the magic of Disneyland. I love the fantasy of it.
Yes.
I think it's a great place to go and escape, as long as you can actually feel like you're going to escape. And I think that speaks to what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, of like, hey, we're just going to have a great day. Like, I love going to Six Flags, and I love roller coasters and stuff like that. And the feeling that I get when I go there, I'm like, oh, all this possibility and stuff like that. Yeah. If that's what they're feeling with their commitment at Disneyland, then I'm all for it.
Good for them, yeah. There's something about imagination. And I think as creatives, we both can really dig into this. Like, there's something about going to a place where you get to foster imagination.
Yes.
If that's Disneyland, if that's Six Flags, if that's, Universal, which I love all 3 of those in some different way or shape. Yeah. There's something magical about escaping into the world. I remember Promax years ago. Yeah. They rented out the Harry Potter portion of Universal. And that was really cool, just to be immersed for a night all by ourselves and not have, the kids running around screaming.
Yeah. You know what? We did that, and it was in winter, and they had this like snow thing going on and this light show and stuff. And I was like, wow, this is this is really cool. And that's why it was like a fantasy.
Yeah.
And so I can see that if that links up within you, then that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a relief almost sometimes. And to get that little break in reality is
so. How many of your designers tried to present light show creative after that evening at Hogwarts?
You know what? I'm always the one trying to sell those sort of like neon light shows.
So it was you. All right.
Yeah, I guess it was me.
That's awesome. Let's see what else the Jester has here. Describe your creative process in one word.
Oh, geez. Patience?
Really? That's a new one.
I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. Or, yeah, I think that's it, because sometimes I'm really sure of something and I'm just straight to it. And then a lot of the other times it's just letting it sit. And then eventually something starts coming together. And I think that's where the patient comes in. We're really big on gathering scrap and reference and doing mood boards and stuff. And going through this, and that's almost a thing in itself, like a skill in itself. And we have a couple people that are just fantastic at it. And when you are presented with all those different things, and then you just kind of sit with it, and then you're not forcing it, and then somehow things just align, and you're like, oh yeah, that's how I could apply that kind of thing to this kind of thing. And then you sort of have like a general plan, and it just gets more and more focused as you move forward.
Patience. That's such an adult way of handling it.
Well, also, and maybe this is a sign of my age, because when I was under pressure in like my 20s or early 30s, like I could tap into something and just boom, boom, and just churn things out. Whereas now I feel like I don't want to rush into things. Now, obviously we get notes and stuff and it's like, no, this is going to air tomorrow. So you got to figure this out. And those things happen. But in the general sort of like branding of things, like I don't see any benefit rushing into it if we have the time. And one of the great things about working at Fox is we often get a lot of time to sit and develop and think about what will be the right thing. Whereas in my freelance years and stuff and going from different shops, it's like, oh no, I need to see solutions in 2 days. And sometimes we get to sit and think about things and think of, 4 or 5 different buckets, different ways to approach it. And then we can talk about it and stuff like that. So I think that not rushing into something and having the patience to let it sort of come to you is the way I enjoy the most creating something.
That's so interesting. I think there's I think in TV and news especially, there's this deadline driven thing. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's no room for patience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You have to get something on air. We've got a promo that's due. Oh, this thing, our deadline is moved up now. They want to do these things 2 weeks ahead. Like we're on a project right now that just happened.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Moved up 2 weeks. We're like, all right, fine, here we go.
Yeah.
So I feel like patience is what we all hope for.
Uh-huh.
But how can we find patience in a rushed environment?
Yeah.
As that you've been able to tap into it in some way.
Uh-huh. Well, actually, I guess we can follow this a little bit of like, we discuss internally, especially in management, of like, don't be reactive to something, right? And that doesn't mean don't do something quickly. It just doesn't, it means don't just make that snap decision. Mm-hmm. If you have 5 minutes instead of 1 minute to just consider something and not just blurt out of the first solution that comes to your head, that maybe that's the way to find that patience when there is no time, of like, just sit with it for a second. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But, and often the first thing that comes to your head is the best thing to do it, just based on experience and all of that kind of stuff. But just taking that little extra beat to think if there's any alternatives that might actually be the better solution for that.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's smart. Find patience in the chaoticness, guys. Patience in the chaos. It's there. I promise you. Dan says it's there, so it's there. Right on the heels of that. What makes you nervous?
Oh, when I would say when I used to, when I would design things and present them, I would feel very vulnerable. And because it's so subjective and you can only present what you think is the right thing. And that might not be the right thing to someone else. So I would always get nervous when I would present my final designs. Now it's a little different because it's a team effort that goes and we've been going with it. And I feel comfortable like selling the idea too. I have that opportunity, whereas as a designer, you don't really get to sell it. You're just like, here it is. Hope you like it.
Yeah.
So that's something. And then the other thing that makes me nervous sometimes is I don't want to be the weak link on the chain.
Right.
Like having it be my fault. And I put a lot of pressure on myself to not be that person. And that's probably sometimes unhealthy, but that's the other thing that really makes me nervous, especially because we're dealing with like, this is going to go on air. And if there's a mistake in this, then there's going to be trouble, and there's a lot of pressure that comes with that.
Yeah. Do you feel like as a manager now, knowing that you've been nervous presenting an idea, do you feel that helps you when one of your team brings something to you and you're like, I bet they're feeling nervous about this. Maybe I can be understand. Like, does that kind of like actively happen?
Yeah, for sure. And especially too, because I didn't go to school for this. I just kind of fell into it. I started as an editor and I just kind of went into design and animation. And so I always felt like, because I would be working with people that, went to SCAD or CalArts and stuff like that, who had like a formal education. And that always made me feel nervous and sometimes inadequate against these people, even though my work was fine. It was just that like I didn't have this formal training or anything like that. And so that always made me nervous too. And so I think that does give me an understanding when working with artists of like, hey, it's cool, man. Like, even if you're not super confident in this, let's talk about it. Like, what about this is not, what do you like about it? And then once you start communicating with someone about the pros and cons of how they feel about it, that kind of opens it up. And I find the less pressure people are under, the better work that will just come out. And it becomes like this stream of consciousness that just comes into them. And if they're a good artist and have good instincts, then those things, if it's not me of like, oh, I don't know, sucks, can you do that again? If they're just open up like, hey, if I keep on trying this, I'm going to hit on something that's really good.
Yeah. That's really cool. I was watching it's called Light and Magic on Disney Plus. It's the founding of ILM.
Yes.
It's fascinating. I don't know if you've seen it or not. But there's something that they always said George Lucas would say. He'd like, just try it for me, Just try, put a hand on the shoulder, just try it for me. And I think that's a really powerful thing to give to your artists, to empower them. Like, I believe in you.
Yeah.
Just try this for me,
Yeah. Totally. Because it does, it's a power thing, but not in a control manner. It's more of like, hey, I'm here with you to support you because I have faith that you're going to figure this out. Yeah. So let's just give it a shot. I'm going through something right now where it's like, I was looking at a design and I was like, should we try a different font in this? Like, it could possibly change the whole thing. And it's like, it's already gone through a few levels of approvals. So we all get a little nervous, like changing something so late. But it's like, okay, well, doesn't hurt to try. We might end up right back in the same place, but at least we'll know that that wasn't the right thing to do. And I think it's very powerful to be able to, oh, let's try this. And then it's an economic term about at some point you keep on putting into something because you've already put so much into it and you won't say stop. Something fallacy.
Returns.
It's something fallacy. Anyway, so I had that as a designer of like, no, I've put so much work into this. I need to make this work. I need to make it work. I need to make it work. And I want to give the artist of like, hey, let's just try all these different things. They might not work. And if it doesn't work, who cares? At least we tried it. Yeah. And just because we're trying it doesn't mean it has to work. And opening that up, I think, helps a lot because that's when the happy accidents happen. They might be trying to do one thing and then realize something else and then stumble on something that no one thought of in the first place.
I love the happy accident.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing. Because that's when you really can see that someone has the awareness to be like, oh, that's the thing. And that just comes from noodling. I mean, I'm sure all of us as artists, just noodled as a kid or just like daydreamed and stuff like that. And kind of getting to do that for a job is pretty crazy. But all of those things, it's like, being able to realize that specific thought might be a useful thing. Yeah.
They're in the freedom to have happy accidents is really important. Yeah. You've got processes and things need to go through certain, revisions and rounds and through all the levels of approvals. But at the end of the day, giving someone the freedom to try to fail, try and succeed. And all of a sudden, like there's this cool, like a little happy accident is very powerful. So I think, how do we as managers and owners and, creative directors, how do we figure out that balance of directing the ship, but also allowing them to kind of like wait out the water a little bit?
I do think about, and just to go back to what I was saying about the luxury of time that we often have. And it's like, because in my head, I'm like, okay, we have 3 weeks for this to be done. And I'm going to have to go up in front of people and produce something and sell something. And so in my head, it's like, okay, and we'll talk about mood boards and different ideas. And then I'll literally have zero expectations to see anything for at least a week. And I'll just be like, just do whatever and try. And if you feel like you want feedback from something, just show it to me. And then we'll talk about it. And then we'll decide, should we follow that? Is there a different avenue? Or should we just kill that straight out? And I find that I use luxury on purpose because having that luxury is pretty awesome. And I think good things get out of it. But just to be able to be like, you know what? I trust you. You do you. Let's talk about things as they come up. But that's where all those different sort of like cross-contamination of ideas and different things like that happen. And I always love talking about it too.
Yeah. Well, on that note, do you feel like the work from home movement has taken that out of the equation? You said cross-contamination. That's a really great way to describe it, because what I feel like when you have designers sitting in a room together, you have the ability as the creative lead to walk around and talk and just kind of view from afar, not say anything, or like lean in and be like, hey, that's cool. Try this, or let's not do that. And like 10 seconds, you're on to the next thing. Do you feel like the work from home stifled that? Did you guys have to figure out a different way to?
You know what? I mean, we were fully remote for over 2 years. We're hybrid now. obviously today's one of the days we're at home, but we're back in office 3 days a week. And I guess there's two things for the designers and the artists that really like what they're doing. And that's everybody on our team, but like they have their little space and they have the thing that they like and the security that they get from being in their own house and having their own stuff around and listening to their own music and doing all of those things. I feel like that was a huge benefit because they felt secure in what they were doing. And that's when they could let their minds wander and stuff like that. And back at work, we do have that. People get up, hey, what are you working on and stuff like that. And then you chat because people do have specialties about certain things where someone will get up and go talk to somebody else. So that's great. I do have to say it was very difficult for me, especially because I became management within work from home.
Oh boy.
So having to figure out how to communicate creative ideas over Zoom, I was not good at it at first. It was really hard. And now I'm on Zooms all day. I'm very comfortable with it, but the side benefit of it really forced me to figure out how to explain what I wanted, and that in turn articulating what I want. Because a lot of times, and just going back to what I was saying, when I was an artist, it was just instinct of like, no, that doesn't feel right. And I would push something around until it does. And now having to do it over Zoom, I have to be like, this doesn't feel right because of this. Mm-hmm. And the way that might fix this is if we do this and this and this. And it really forces me to think about what I'm trying to communicate and how to communicate the solution to the thing that's bothering me.
Yeah. I find I use my Zoom screen a lot here. I'm like, okay, we got this space. It needs to go here. And it's going to come out of like here. And then people are like, they're following me, like see their eyes on the screen. And it just cracks me up. Like, okay, it worked. In real life, if you were standing here, I'd touch your screen in that way. Yeah. Because I touched your screen, but too bad.
There's a couple artists where we'll just share the screen and we'll just talk it out as if I'm there standing behind them. And sometimes it will be 2 hours of me just like, solo that layer, do this and this. And then they would do something. I'd answer some emails that come back. And it was almost like a live Zoom kind of feed thing. And we would just come in and out of it. And I think that's a testament to some of the open communication and the relationships that we built within our team.
Yeah, no, I love all of that. And what I love too is how we went from nervous into this, like we completely segued into something else. That's awesome. All right, let's see what we got here. We got time for one or two more. You've been fantastic so far. All right. Tell me a quote or piece of movie / TV dialogue that you'll never forget.
Oh. There's a lot of quotes in my head. I have to say Ferris Bueller's Day Off was a very influential movie in my life. Great. I saw it when, I don't know, whenever it came out, I was probably like 10 or something. And I was like, you can do that?
no, Dad, you cannot do that. As your mother standing behind.
Right. I don't know that movie's pretty important. So I quote that. What's one of your favorite lines in that movie? Of course, I quote a lot of Will Ferrell movies and stuff like that, and John C. Reilly. All of that kind of stuff. But I don't know if I have like a mantra based off of any quotes or anything like that.
Yeah, I find that very interesting. I feel like there's always, the one line that someone can be like, oh, there's Dan again with happy.
I'm sure.
Like, my roommate from college, he loved the Are You Looking at Me, Swan from Billy Madison, and like all the time, and we would know that would come up in conversation, almost every single time. We always laugh about it. So there's.
What about you? Do you have one?
I do. For me, it's Yoda. It's there's do or do not. I
like that one very much.
That one is always in my head. And it's funny how when I'm making excuses for myself. I'm like, oh, I'll try. I'm like, what do you mean you'll try? Like I had this like angel and devil thing on my shoulders where I was like, except it's Yoda and some other character. But that's one that the gist of it resonates with me a lot.
Yeah.
Like, get after it, do what you need to do. And yes, you can try, Yoda's all like, don't try, do it or do not. But I get the gist of it and I love it. And it's something that has stuck with me forever. And it's kind of how I like to let you go.
Because doing it could mean trying.
Right.
And that's the important thing. You at least try so you know if it's going to work out or not.
Yeah. Well, there's a fun irony in that Light and Magic documentary, George is like, just try for me.
Yeah, right.
He's the Yoda creator that said that with that line. So I like the irony of that too. But yeah, that would be one for me. That always is just stuck with me, and I think running a studio has been something that I think have to have that mentality. Like, we're going to do this.
Yeah. Because
there's there's people that rely on us, their livelihood, their salaries, like, so there just becomes something that you just have to do it.
Yeah.
So that's one that resonates with me.
I'm sure you feel a responsibility to the people that work for you and with you. And I'm sure that's a lot of pressure for you as well. I mean,
it is, but it's fun. I thrive on the pressure of it. I like that. I would feel like I'd be bored without it. There's just something that helps you get through the day. You're like, oh, you know what? And maybe it's just my personality. I'm a firstborn of three boys. Like,
oh, right.
I've been in charge my whole life. So why would I stop now?
It just makes sense to you.
My brothers are going to just roll their eyes at this. That's for sure. But no, this was good. Let's see here. You got time for one more?
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's do one more. This is awesome. This is actually funny. How do you know you're done with something?
Oh, I have this is someone else's story, but going back to quotes and things that resonate with me. So I hope I'll tell this story right. And it was, the Mark Maron podcast, right? And he was finally interviewing Lorne Michaels, and he was asking him, because they do all the dress rehearsals, they cut this and this. And so Mark is like, how do you know when it's done? And Lorne's answer was, it's 11:30. And I thought that was the perfect answer, because it's never going to be done. And you just have to have something to just be like, especially with design and stuff, because you can just noodle and push things around or leave it and come back and all of that kind of stuff. You need some sort of thing to tell you of like, hey, just stop. Like, it's good. Yeah. Let's just go with this. Let's move on to the next thing.
That's a very practical answer to a group of people who have difficulty with practicality. Like, we want to, like you said, we want to noodle on it. It's never done. We want to paint until we've covered everything with 4 layers and do it again and again. At some point, there's a deadline. There's everything. It's done.
Right. It's a pragmatic way. And I guess that, if you're running a business and stuff like that, like that's a reality that you have to deal with, of like, oh no, these things deliver at some point.
Yeah.
So that when these things deliver, that's when they're done.
That's when it's done.
It's up to you to try and fit as much stuff as possible up until that point, and then feel good about it. And it's also weird of like, this has come up with me recently of like, I don't want to see something out in the wild and have regret of like, oh, I should have changed that, And I express that with the designers too, of like, hey, if there's something that's bothering you, please fix it now, because you're not going to get a chance to fix it later. Once it's out in the wild, it's there. So, but also on the flip side of that, that's going to happen sometimes. So how do you, as a creative, just let that go? And then I guess that will just come back to, well, it had to deliver.
That was it.
You know what? You'll get them next time, Tiger.
So manager Dan can handle that a little bit more. When you were younger, how hard was that to stomach?
Oh, I would work till like 4 a.m. trying to get stuff. I would kill myself to try and do it because I had this thing in my head of like when it was done, what it needed to look like when it was finished. And, you know, as I got more experience, I realized that that's 2% of the entire thing. That thing that I had in my head that I was trying to reach and achieve, in the grand scheme of things, didn't really matter. It was for myself rather than for the project. So then, I don't know, maybe with age and maturity, it's just like, you know what? We're doing our best. We have a lot of different things going on, and we hit all of the things. We like this idea. This didn't exist before we came up with it, which is a very special thing.
Yeah.
And let's try and just be happy and enthusiastic that we got this far with it, because there's a lot of roadblocks that come up.
Well, and it's managing expectations for yourself a little bit too. And just being like, okay, all those things that you just said. Okay, well, yeah, this is a success. Okay, yes, I can talk about this. I can revel in this a little bit.
It's much more than what it looks like visually. And I guess this goes to the manager thing of like all of this other stuff that it's like what they say is like, it's amazing that movies get made in the first place of like so many different things have to go right for it actually just to happen. And I kind of feel that way with some of these projects of like so many different conflicting things are happening. And the fact that it gets done is quite amazing to me sometimes. Yeah. And that's not a comment on like how bad things work or anything like that. It's just like, there's a lot of things that go into it to be able to get it on air. And
be happy about that. Like, enjoy that. Yeah.
And one more luxury that I have working at Fox is like, I have my own shop for a little bit, and the stress of like finding new work and stuff like that was just, it was the worst. I made the mistake of not getting an executive producer. I was trying to creative direct. I was trying to do business management. I was trying to do all of that stuff together. In the stress of just getting this, and I'm sure you deal with this sometimes, and other studios of like, you need to get work in consistently. And at Fox, there's always going to be new TV shows.
Right.
I don't have to worry about getting news. So that luxury, which I realize is very, very special, helps me just be like, okay, we did the best that we could with this one, and there's going to be another one, and maybe we can apply some of the things that we learned on this one, or the things that went back, and we'll try and do better next time.
I love that. I'm gonna try and do better then. You know what? That's a great thing to end on. Dan, I love that. It was so good. Thank you very much for your time.
Oh, thank you.
Great talking to you. There's so many good insights. I can't wait to get this out and share with them.
All right, right on. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thank you, sir.